This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Aaron Mate. Welcome to our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has arrived in Washington as part of his bid to stop a nuclear deal with Iran. Netanyahu will address the lobby group AIPAC today, followed by a controversial speech before Congress on Tuesday. The visit comes just as Iran and 6 world powers, including the U.S., are set to resume talks in a bid to meet a March 31st deadline. At the White House, Press Secretary Josh Earnest said Netanyahu's trip won't threaten the outcome.
I think the short answer to that is I don't think so. And the reason is simply that there is a real opportunity for us here. And the President is hopeful that we are going to have an opportunity to do what is clearly in the best interests of the United States and Israel, which is to resolve the international community's concerns about Iran's nuclear program at the negotiating table.
The trip has sparked the worst public rift between the U.S. and Israel in over 2 decades. Dozens of Democrats could boycott Netanyahu's address to Congress, which was arranged by House Speaker John Boehner without consulting the White House. The Obama administration will send 2 officials, National Security Advisor Susan Rice and UN Ambassador Samantha Power, to address the AIPAC summit today. This comes just days after Rice called Netanyahu's visit, quote, destructive.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is also facing domestic criticism for his unconventional Washington visit, which comes just 2 weeks before an election in which he seeks a 3rd term in Israel. On Sunday, a group representing nearly 200 of Israel's top retired military and intelligence officials accused Netanyahu of assaulting the U.S.-Israel alliance. But despite talk of a U.S. and Israeli dispute, the Obama administration has taken pains to display its staunch support for the Israeli government. Speaking just today in Geneva, Secretary of State John Kerry blasted the UN Human Rights Council for what he called an obsession and bias against Israel. The council is expected to release a report in the coming weeks on potential war crimes in Israel's U.S.-backed Gaza assault last summer. For more, we spend the hour today with world-renowned political dissident, linguist, author Noam Chomsky. He has written over 100 books, most recently on Western terrorism from Hiroshima to drone warfare. His forthcoming book, co-authored with Ilan Pappé, is titled On Palestine and will be out next month. Noam Chomsky is Institute Professor Emeritus at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he's taught for more than 50 years. Noam Chomsky, it's great to have you back here at Democracy Now!, and particularly in our very snowy outside but warm inside New York studio.
Delighted to be here again.
Well, Noam, let's start with Netanyahu's visit. He is set to make this unprecedented joint address to Congress, unprecedented because of the kind of rift it has demonstrated between the Republicans and the Democratic president, President Obama. Can you talk about its significance?
For both Prime Minister Netanyahu and the hawks in Congress, mostly Republican, the primary goal is to undermine any potential negotiation that might settle whatever issue there is with Iran. They have a common interest in ensuring that there is no regional force that can serve as any kind of deterrent to Israeli and U.S. violence, the major violence in the region. And it is, if we believe U.S. intelligence, I don't see any reason not to, their analysis is that if Iran is developing nuclear weapons, which they don't know, it would be part of their deterrent strategy. Their general strategic posture is one of deterrence. They have low military expenditures. According to U.S. intelligence, their strategic doctrine is to try to prevent an attack up to the point where diplomacy can set in. I don't think anyone with a gray cell functioning thinks that they would ever conceivably use a nuclear weapon or even try to. The country would be obliterated in 15 seconds. But they might provide a deterrent of sorts, and the U.S. and Israel certainly don't want to tolerate that. They are the forces that carry out regular violence and aggression in the region and don't want any impediment to that. For the Republicans in Congress, there's another interest, namely to undermine anything that Obama, the Antichrist, might try to do. So that's a separate issue there. The Republicans stopped being a ordinary parliamentary party some years ago. They were described, I think, accurately by Norman Ornstein, very respected conservative political analyst, American Enterprise Institute. He said the party has become a radical insurgency which has abandoned any commitment to parliamentary democracy. And their goal for the last years has simply been to undermine anything that Obama might do in an effort to regain power and serve their primary constituency, which is the very wealthy and the corporate sector. They try to conceal this with all sorts of other means, and doing so they've had to, you can't get votes that way, so they've had to mobilize sectors of the population which have always been there but were never mobilized into an organized political force. Evangelical Christians, extreme nationalists, terrified people who have to carry guns into Starbucks because somebody might be after them, and so on and so forth. That's a big force. And inspiring fear is not very difficult in the United States. It's a long history, back to colonial times, of as an extremely frightened society, which is an interesting story in itself, and mobilizing people in fear of them, whoever them happens to be, is an effective technique used over and over again. And right now, the Republicans have their non-policy has succeeded in putting them back in a position of at least congressional power. So the attack on, this is a personal attack on Obama and intended that way, is simply part of that general effort. But there is a common strategic concern underlying it, I think, and that is pretty much what U.S. intelligence analyzes, preventing any deterrent in the region to U.S. and Israeli actions.